So, you guys really like that Miraculous Ladybug video. Huh. Thank you. I am going to be honest, I really fell off Miraculous hard sometime between the end of Season 2 and the most fraught parts of Season 3. And don't even get me started on Season 4, but I am starting to regret it, honestly.
I'm really sorry I didn't come to your dad's funeral.
Even with that delightful camp of it all, I still remember the hiatus between Season 1 and 2 and how honestly excited I was about the show and its characters and the world that surrounded them, and the deep underlying sense that I could probably do better. It might just come from the pure egotism of having the capacity to look down at a finished product and be able to piece together where the paint has yet to dry, or which nails need to be pulled, which I'm sure is hard for any creator. And it's probably even harder when you become the icon of a multi-million-dollar studio and are pushed through the marketing machine for, I'm sorry, 7 seasons of what? With the pieces I've been given, I'd like to think I can make something maybe a little better. And I'd like to think that I could theoretically put my money where my mouth is. So these are the top 12 things I'd change about Miraculous Ladybug. Why 12? Because the list got long. The only qualifications for this little thought exercise is that this version that I'm doing, be it a reboot, a pickup, a continuation, whatever, still has to be aimed at the original TVY audience, or TVY7 at the most, and a multitude of the plot elements still have to remain the same. Adrien and Marinette still have to get together, Gabriel is still Hawkmoth, etc., 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 and my only qualifications for doing this is that I've never gotten into a fight on Twitter about anything. If any of these things are fixed in Season 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or whenever this video comes out, cool! I guess. With that said, let's go! This list is in order from the most minor of fixes I'd make to the largest of overhauls I'd pull. Fun fact, I don't actually dislike Marinette. I know that the implications of my first video about Miraculous may cause you to think that, but I like her. I feel like there could be some aspects of her character that are conveyed more often, but I understand her purpose within this magical girl series. I've been around the block of the cute, hopeful, optimistic main heroine before. I just feel like I could like her more if she was written without that stutter. You know, the
it's to, gift you a make. Adrien! Nice to fencing, I'm totally into you. What a charm! The charm, Mark and I wanted to give him a disguise. Gift you a gift I made,
It's the smallest thing. I know. Now, I don't dislike the idea of her having a speech impediment, or this being a shorthand way to convey her anxiety to an audience that might not be ready to see vivid depictions of panic attacks, or more harmful fretting that could be imitated by those who are more impressionable. In fact, I think it would be really interesting if throughout Season 1, if it was used as a way to convey how confident she was based on how often she did it, and it going away being a sign of her conquering her more nervous tendencies. Or, on the contrary, her still having the stutter, but still being listened to more and more over the course of the season, as her classmates grow to see her as their everyday ladybug, even if they doubt that she could speak in front of an audience, let alone yell at Hawkmoth on a daily basis. I just think that there's this thread that could be pulled here relating to Marinette's development, whether she's able to change to suit the needs of her surroundings, or if others are more willing to cater to her needs based on how much they like her, and how there could be an interesting piece there regarding the events of later episodes, if even when those around her dislike her, if they're still willing to grant her that basic respect. Like, there's a lot that could be done with this little piece of writing, whether the speech impediment is removed or not. But no. She stammers because she has a crush on a cute boy. She only stammers in front of him because trite romantic trope. I know it's only a couple of seconds, but that's a couple of seconds that could be spent developing the relationship of the main pairing within this rom-com. And this builds up. I don't think I can even remember a conversation between the two of them that didn't feel stilted as all hell. Chloe's whole thing might be being fake, but their conversations still feel far more authentic and carry a lot more ease to them than whatever our main pair actually have going on. Conclusion? Either use your trite romantic trope for greater characterization, or lose it. This is very superficial. Probably even more than the stuttering, considering this only affects an episode's general style. But this is still a visual medium, and appearance matters within a visual medium. Shocking, I know. With that said, I wish the Akuma designs just fucking shredded more. Maybe this is because I watched Madoka Magica at 13 and it was like my 4th ever anime, so I have impossibly high standards now. But I feel like they're missing out on some really interesting design possibilities. Like, this is supposed to be your pain and anguish made manifest as you succumb to despair. But you can finally do something about it. You can finally have a say regarding the life you lead from this point on. And you have the ability to bend the world to your whims to motive B. But you have to look like that? That sucks! That sucks so bad! Sabrina doesn't even get an actual Akuma design until season 3! I mean, check out these cool designs by Tides Miraculous on Tumblr of designs actually inspired by Madoka, and don't they look cool as shit? I understand that the show is probably more invested in maintaining its capes and cowls formula of heroes and villains and silly, brightly colored spandex than Madoka was in maintaining the formula of your classical magical girl series. But the show does actively refract as much as it reflects much of the cliche aspects of superhero stories. And as the Ophelia Reedy rule of writing states, when you have the chance to throw in a cool-looking monster, you throw in a cool-looking monster. Conclusion? Why constantly introduce one-off characters to be akumatized if you aren't going to make any of these people cool-ass monsters? Rip to Thomas's Strook, but I was just built different. Of the 26 episodes released in Season 1, 15 of them featured akumatized classmates. And to be honest, I really like that format. First and foremost, it works as a way to characterize Marinette and Adrien via their relationships with other people, i.e., how they act in front of people they like and don't, how others perceive them in turn, as well as generally filling up the world. We care about Paris, not just because Adrien and Marinette live there, and their close friends and family live there, but because we care about Julika and Rose and Nathaniel and Kim and so many others because we were given a chance to. I mean, when there's a separate fandom for what in many other shows would probably just be background characters, you know you're doing something right. Even if their titular episodes are a bit lacking in some departments, such as Nathaniel being introduced as a shy cartoonist with a crush on Marinette really being all we get from him, we're able to get more aspects about him in other episodes. Like the fact that he's friends with a bunch of their other classmates, that they hang out outside of class, and is capable of incredible rage. It just feels like a waste to go through all the work of giving these characters depth, even if it's only really shallowly, and focus, if they're not going to do anything more with them than fill up a scene. Because, yeah, Nathaniel is given some characterization, and sometimes his presence in episodes give his character greater implications, but sometimes he's just another body to be running around Paris, or is forced to bend to the whims of a greater narrative. I mean, I'm not going to say chameleon, but you look me in the eyes and admit to our clown-to-clown telepathic link and say it's not chameleon because it's totally not chameleon. It's not chameleon, you guys. why would we bring up Chameleon at a time like this? I mean, I don't think I'm asking a lot. It's not like I'm asking for a whole episode dedicated to the classmates or anything. I'm not one to make broad generalizations or to hold up the past as the supreme, but I do feel like a lot of modern cartoons are afraid to pull focus away from not just their main cast, but their main characters. Or even character, you could say. Looking at you, Stevie boy. Steve man, buddy, dude. Now you could say in response to that very light critique that Steven is the main character that has to be featured in every single episode in one way or another because he's supposed to be an unreliable narrator. And his focus is the point, as we spend most of the series learning things about the world and himself with him, as we learn that the gems are damaged languaging people around the same time that he does, as he grows older. And I'd say, yeah, sure. But I think about episodes like Zuko Alone or Almost Got 'Em. Beloved episodes that shifted perspective to a different member of the main or secondary cast and allowed us both to understand more about these specific characters, understand more about our main characters, and understand the world. Also, we're supposed to be talking about Miraculous Ladybug, my bad, y'all. Imagine an episode where, for a segment on the Lady blog, some of the classmates got to talk about their experiences with the great heroes of Paris and how they really view them, be it as night-stalking terrors with a deep and unbridled vengeance, or absolute dorks who hit their heads with their own weapons or slip off of rooftops when nobody's looking, and how all of these facets overall inform their perspective of them, as well as their love. Or an episode where we focus on the classmates during an Akuma attack, as they sequester themselves in a classroom to try to ride it out the same way you would a hurricane or a tornado, and they just have to wait until Ladybug and Chat Noir can get there to stop it, and stop it from hurting them, because, well, Ladybug and Chat Noir would never let them down. I mean, right, Marinette? I'm not even saying that Marinette or Adrien can't be featured in these episodes. I'm not even saying that the episode can't mostly be about them. But moving the needle does give it something more. More of the world. More of these side characters. And if the cards are played right, even more of our main characters. A world is not made to be lived in by two people alone. But even a world centered on one or two people can feel lived in if the work is really done. I think Evillustrator is one of the best formatted episodes Miraculous Ladybug has ever done. I wouldn't call it my favorite for some of its cringier moments and its desperate need to cling to the status quo, but I do think it had the right idea, in that Evillustrator felt like an episode of any other teen superhero show, and I think that's a good thing. Under these terms, a teen superhero show isn't necessarily a television show that portrays teens as heroes, but rather superhero shows that ride the line between portraying adolescents and superhero work side by side. In other words, failing a test, not getting your driver's permit, or needing to fight a date for the spring fling can be just as, or even more important than stopping a crime spree, or saving the world from whatever threatens it this week. Butch Hartman can eat my entire ass, but there's a through line that Danny Fenton's superhero activities as Danny Phantom affects practically every other aspect of his life. He's not doing the best in school as a Sierra student to begin with, his powers are constantly throwing him off the little game he does have, and his relationship with practically everybody he meets and knows is altered by whether or not they're aware of this secret life he leads. And the Evillustrator is one of the few episodes in Miraculous Ladybug that really feels like it indulges in this format, for a lack of a better frame of reference. Marinette is at the center of an Akuma-based conflict as well as an interpersonal one, and when abstracted to a certain degree, you could say that they kind of act as narrative reflections of each other. Both place Marinette as an object of desire and see her fall from grace in a manner of speaking. And the fact that Marinette is the one at the center of these conflicts is important in regards to her character, both regarding her rivalry with Chloe and Evillustrator's unrequited love for her, that leads to her being incongruent matches for Sabrina and Nathaniel. And as a bonus, is implied to take place over multiple days, which allows them to be considered something more of a threat. And this being the first episode, Marinette and Chat Noir interact, and wow, I could literally just do a video talking about Evillustrator. The point is, I'm not saying that I want Miraculous Ladybug to be like every other teen superhero show because I just happen to enjoy them. I'm saying this because teen superhero shows that treat the characters as if both their lives could have tangible overlap with each other in a wide variety of ways is kind of what the superhero genre is about. Not just ones based on the highs and lows of high school football. And Evillustrator just happens to be the best episode to demonstrate that in the world of Miraculous, a show that literally gives its main character the power to make sure that no consequences have to carry on between episodes, let alone within the episodes themselves, that ramifications could be really interesting to explore. Okay, what am I talking about when it comes to ramifications? Because I'm clearly not talking about lore here. Well, remember all that stuff I said before about wanting things to matter within the text of the show? Even if only to the characters and only for the episode, on occasion? I want to kick up that idea to like a cool 5. I can take it or leave it in regards to serialization, but the world of Miraculous Ladybug, even just within the confines of Paris, could be explored with such a depth and such a richness, thanks to the basic foundation that the show has provided. As a rule, I don't give shit about world building. You develop what you need to tell the story you want to tell. There's no reason to detail the inner workings of one small town's train station unless you have a protagonist that needs to get on that train before the end of the story. But I can't help but feel like there are so many interesting ramifications that could be explored within the show that could help Paris feel like much more of a living, breathing world. A world where we care about the helpless city our heroes protect, because that helpless city could be where we reside, even if it is in France. The show has made some moves towards that. There are Akuma alarms and emotional counseling sessions down at school, but I feel like there could be, like, just a touch more. Like, how are Akuma victims treated after being Akumatized? Are they forgiven, or is there a slight stigma that's given to them, especially considering how easy it would be for them to be Akumatized again? Is there any controversy regarding the fact that most of the Akuma victims came from the same secondary school? Has Paris become a tourist attraction because they so frequently have these all-out brawls all the time? Or has the city become more desolate ever since a magical terrorist has the ability to turn you into a criminal over being the slightest bit sad? And if it does become a tourist attraction, are there people who go to Paris for the exclusive purpose of getting Akumatized? Do the police have a protocol for dealing with Akumas? Can Akumas get arrested? Can Akumatized victims receive criminal charges for crimes they committed under the influence? Or is there a specific law that prevents them from having to face these quandaries? Are people of Paris discouraged from performing negative actions, i.e. firing workers, ending relationships, or failing students for the sake of preventing more frequent Akumatizations? These are all questions that could be asked about the show just in regards to how Paris treats Akumatizations and the aftermath of them. And it's okay not to have all the answers. These aren't real questions. I could come up with 20 more in a minute and it wouldn't matter at all. And I wouldn't blame Mr. for not being able to answer any of these. I'd blame him for bullshitting because I highly doubt that he has considered the way the legal proceedings and the criminal justice system of the Miraculous Ladybug universe work, because no 4-year-old wants to sit down and watch a courtroom drama. That's because these questions aren't being asked for the sake of an answer. They're being asked for the sake of a story. Take that one about the school controversy. This is a question that's kind of a tease pointed at the writers for so frequently pulling from the same shallow pool. But there could be an interesting story here. Maybe the district wants to pull funding from the school because of the stigma that surrounds the students that go there. Maybe because the whole city seems to be shutting down as is, and there's no need to have 10 different secondary schools when just 8 or so will do. But there's still this stigma in that telling any one of these students or teachers or faculty members that they're shutting it down could, for certain, lead to a giant monster attack or 10, and they're not really sure they want to risk it. So the members of Miss Boustier's class still have a chance to sway them into not closing down the school by doing whatever needs to be done to keep it open. Be it a fundraiser, the ability to show off their emotional maturity by not becoming those wretched monsters for a week, or an endorsement from the heroes themselves to do it. Or even all three. Did you see what I did there? I took one idea for world building and was able to tie together 3 different other world building ideas into one episode story. Because that's what world building is supposed to be. World building supports the story, not the other way around. And I see Miraculous Ladybug not supporting either. And I think it's a waste. Anyhow, tune in for my 2025 Miraculous Ladybug reboot with a courtroom episode and a discussion of the ethics surrounding celebrity endorsements. Hey. Okay, so, not to heavily date this video whenever it comes out, but Gabriel Gress came out last week. And ever since, I've been waffling about whether or not I should cut this section or even release this video at all, given that my opinions in here are a bit dated, and I do not inherently value my own time or labor enough to not scrap an entire video. But then I realized that all of this could be fixed with the simple disclaimer that a lot of these opinions are based in the context of the only episode featuring Felix at the time of writing was his titular episode, where he was written as a fucking asshole on the verge of an assault charge. I think Thomas has softened on the character since then, but I refuse to soften on him. Feelings are temporary, media is forever. Maybe even this media. I can only fear and hope that is the case. With that in mind, please view the next section of this video under that lens. Or don't. Thank you, and on with the rest of the section. Hopefully, editing Ophelia won't have to pop up again for the duration of the video, but let's not jinx ourselves any more than I already have. One of my favorite writers once said that the best way they figured out to set up interesting conflicts was to stratify their characters into different, separate groups. Be they royalty that seems to be running a spectrum between knowing cruelty to blissful ignorance. A group of rabble-rousing ne'er-do-wells who claim that they could have a stake in the royalty, even as their motives clearly lie elsewhere. Or the good old-fashioned rebels who have seen too much heartbreak and sorrow to live without trying to see tomorrow. And of course, those who have no home anywhere, be it out of choice, or lack of conviction, or psych, this was my big chance to talk about Air's Game again. Watch that video, it's such a good comic. But there was a legitimate point to be made there. We have our heroes. We have our villains. We have our civilians who can flip-flop on a dime based on where the narrative needs them to go. But I feel like Miraculous really lacks those outliers. Where's Miraculous's boastful bard who's just trying to find the most interesting story to tell? Where's Miraculous rebel without a drive who promises to be as evil as its heroes are good for the sake of a satisfying story to tell? I have 2 characters who I think would be able to sell this. Kagami is one of them. But the other one, I think could, is Felix. I think Felix has an honest capacity to be very interesting. Thomas's Strook is just boring and mean sometimes, and doesn't like the idea of people liking things outside of the narrow focus of his narrative scope. That doesn't mean he's right. For context, Felix is the name given to the original version of Adrien from the days of the PV, after Felix the Cat. And, of course, and he's kind of grown to have a fandom in his own right. And because he's popular, people began asking Thomas questions about him, like, why wasn't he used? Why wasn't he in the show? Would he ever be in the show? And a stroke. A strook, a strook, a strook. Hated that shit. So bad. So fucking bad. Because God forbid this man doesn't respond to every tweet added at him. So he gave us Felix. And then he tried to make him as sucky as he could on purpose so no one would like him. But joke's on that guy. We're wise to this game that he loves to play. Anyhow, now that Felix is an actual pawn on the board that I can play with without rocking the boat too much, I'd like to use him for the sake of the dynamic I mentioned earlier. Imagine Felix moving into the Agrest household after his father died, when his mother was too bereft to be able to care for him on her own. Or, so he says. Imagine him being actively involved in trying to solve the potential mystery involved with his father's death and his aunt's disappearance, something that allows him to come in contact with Hawkmoth in the flesh. And he takes full advantage of it, now working as a field agent of his. Supposedly. Hawkmoth thinks he's on his side. The heroes think he's on their side. All he's here for is the information he can gather and protecting the little piece of family he has left, even if he refuses to admit that he is really so invested in them. Whether that them could refer to the heroes or Hawkmoth could flip-flop as necessary. This is our loose cannon in the field. And I think the narrative could really benefit from having a character like this. Everyone loves the idea of the Joker, the Lex Luthor, the big bad that is everything our heroes are supposed to despise. But there's a reason that a character like Catwoman has survived for so long. Whether she's playing up the act as Bruce Wayne's quirky, klepto, rich friend, the flirt that can never be declawed, the villain she appears to be, the villain she isn't, or even the Gotham City siren who has nothing better to do than pal around with the gals, or even every single iteration, all at once, at the same time. There's a value in an archetype like this, and in a show that tends to get as repetitive as Miraculous Ladybug does, I cannot think of anything more valuable than a character like this to throw a little spice in what would otherwise be a pound of sugar. But, take that with a grain of salt. The love square was actually one of the most dynamic and innovative parts of Miraculous Ladybug, if only because it had the chance to experiment with 4 different relationship dynamics at one time, between the same 2 people. Not only is this a way to allow deeper character exploration as you get to see how Marinette and Adrien act in different situations, but with different personality types in a variety of settings, with as low or high stakes as you want, but you're forever reassured that the relationship will eventually be made official, and that the time that you spent investing interest will actually be rewarded. It's just how it'll be made official first that really drives up the tension. This is clever as hell, and really allows insight into how multifaceted these characters often are, and how often the mask slips, and there's so much that can be done with this, and psych bitch, I did it again! Thomas the Stroke has said that the different dynamics basically mean nothing! We aren't supposed to treat the characters as 2 different people under 4 different contexts. We're supposed to treat the characters as one person talking to one person at any given time! Of course, he's been known to flip on a dime regarding this, at one moment claiming that opposites attract is one of the most toxic romantic tropes there is, to claiming that no other piece of media has explored the concept of the love square in such an innovative way. Are you sure, dude? Because at the moment, you're kind of squandering the gift of the concept. We all know that Marinette and Adrien are going to get together, at worst, by the end of the show. This isn't necessarily because we want them to get together, but because everything from the framework to the aesthetic imagery to the characters in the show are saying that there's no way that the show ends without them getting together. Because what would be the alternative if not that? So, at this point, it's about when Adrien and Marinette will get together. but it's also about which version will get together first. And I think they should run with that more. If you're going to boast about your fan base caring about the 4 different ways your main characters could get together, then fucking commit to it! Remember during the gap between seasons when they first posted about that Mary Chat balcony scene and the fandom collectively lost their marbles because we thought we were finally going to get something going with the series and then basically nothing happened? I cannot subsist on scenes anymore. And neither should any of you. I want episodes. Full episodes. Every episode is Adrienne and Lady Noir pandering, and I realize that, but I want episodes. I want to be actively invested in which side of the square is actually going to get together first, and I don't want to be treated like a goddamn fool for it. Imagine an episode where Ladybug is invited to a special press event or gala, and is asked to bring her +1. And because Ladybug has an inkling that the event is going to pressure them to be seen as a couple within the public sphere of Paris, she invites Adrien Agreste instead, and makes all the headlines instead. But it also gives us as an audience a chance to see 2 characters who are usually playing their better selves to be just a little less perfect in front of each other, and still receive love for it, for being who they are. Or imagine an episode where Marinette goes to Chat Noir for dating advice on a whim, kind of as a joke to herself, when she sees him hanging out on her balcony instead of returning home early. And the 2 build up a rapport as they begin to hang out and grow more open and honest with each other, if they were being anybody other than themselves they are in that minute, and being able to build up a sincere friendship. One not based on a particular kind of lust or loyalty, but a true endeared enjoyment of companionship. I know the show can sometimes deliver. There's the sarcophagus scene in Riposte, and much of Where Dad was based around Marinette and Chat Noir's relationship, even if it only existed to tell the audience why these 2 can never get together under context like this. I know the show is capable of occasionally tossing its loving audience a bone, but I want this show to say with its full chest, I wanted to fucking commit. And isn't that what most people look for in a romantic relationship in the first place? A form of commitment? I don't know why the show can't do the same. Even, and especially, if it's a commitment to not committing. It's the thing I already made a 10-minute video about! Surprise, surprise, am I right? I'm not going to restate that whole video. It's a waste of everybody's time if I do, though to say that I'm not going to leech points from it would be incorrect as well. I just feel like this show would be so much stronger if it lifted the burden of main character off of Marinette. Because, let's face it, Marinette is only doing so many interesting things at one time as an ordinary girl with an ordinary life who just so happens to be one of the saviors of Paris, and Adrien, who literally lives in the same house as the main villain of the series. This could be so easily used to play up drama, tension, narrative stakes, awkward conversations over dinner that carry with them so much foreshadowing and doublespeak, mutual spying that could lead to tense confrontation, Gabriel and Adrien having to confront the fact that they know so little about each other because since when has Adrien worn a ring, and since when has Gabriel begun sneaking away so often? Things like that could give a sense of narrative tension in a house that is not a home, when you could be sleeping under the same roof as the greatest magical terrorist in all of Paris. And in that same turn of phrase, sleeping under the same roof as one of the crusaders of Paris that could smash all your hopes to bits. But even then, even without all that dramatic tension, Count of Monte Cristo nonsense, plots about Adrien being called to action for an Akuma during a televised interview and having to figure out a way to sneak away without damaging his father's brand. Adrien being talked into a date with Lila and coming to understand what Marinette dislikes about her so much. Being caught climbing in through a window on his way home and having to spin a yarn about Chat Noir and him actually being besties, despite his father's clear disapproval. There's a lot that could be done with just the idea of giving Adrien stories to work with at all. But disregarding all this, disregarding all these little plot threads that I spun just for the purpose of showing that there are plot threads to be spun at all, let me put it to you this way. Dividing the screen time will make the moments spent with Marinette and the stories told with her that much more meaningful, and vice versa. Because that means when we're spending time with her, there are actual stories being told. It isn't just Marinette needs to make a hat. It's actual compelling narratives. The show constantly says that creation cannot be without destruction, that Ladybug and Chat Noir need each other, that they're teammates, partners even. But I don't believe it. Maybe it's just a way that Chat Noir jumps to sacrifice himself while Ladybug does all the actual work of saving the day. I don't know. Or maybe it's because the narrative format itself is unwilling to commit to the idea that Adrien and Chad are just as important as Marinette and Ladybug. I don't know. But the show would be better for it if they could just commit to the idea. A lot of things about the show would be better if they could just commit to the ideas that they're trying to convey. But hey, what do I know? So, you guys really like that Miraculous Ladybug video. Huh. Thank you. I am going to be honest, I really fell off Miraculous hard sometime between the end of Season 2 and the most fraught parts of Season 3. And don't even get me started on Season 4, but I am starting to regret it, honestly.
I'm really sorry I didn't come to your dad's funeral.
Even with that delightful camp of it all, I still remember the hiatus between Season 1 and 2, and how honestly excited I was about the show and its characters and the world that surrounded them, and the deep underlying sense that I could probably do better. It might just come from the pure egotism of having the capacity to look down at a finished product and be able to piece together where the paint has yet to dry, or which nails need to be pulled, which I'm sure is hard for any creator. And it's probably even harder when you become the icon of a multi-million-dollar studio and are pushed through the marketing machine for, I'm sorry, 7 seasons of what? With the pieces I've been given, I'd like to think I can make something maybe a little better. And I'd like to think that I could theoretically put my money where my mouth is. So these are the top 12 things I'd change about Miraculous Ladybug. Why 12? Because the list got long. The only qualifications for this little thought exercise is that this version that I'm doing, be it a reboot, a pickup, a continuation, whatever, still has to be aimed at the original TVY audience, or TVY7 at the most, and a multitude of the plot elements still have to remain the same. Adrien and Marinette still have to get together, Gabriel is still Hawkmoth, etc., 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 and my only qualifications for doing this is that I've never gotten into a fight on Twitter about anything. If any of these things are fixed in Season 3, or 4, or 5, or 6, or whenever this video comes out, cool! I guess. With that said, let's go! This list is in order from the most minor of fixes I'd make to the largest of overhauls I'd pull.